Naming is not doing. Why it matters to get something defined and named part 2. There I was, finally holding the word that I'd been looking for. This time it was RSD, rejection sensitivity dysphoria. Other times it's been words like time blindness or short-term memory loss. Not a big deal. It doesn't matter what the word was. What matters is what happened next. Nothing. My life looked exactly the same the next morning. That gap between the relief of finally naming something and your life actually changing the next day is where a lot of really smart clients get stuck, because they confuse naming it and the dopamine that comes with naming it for actually doing the work. That's what today's video and my article is all about right now: naming versus doing. If you have an unconventional style of thinking, you already know that this goes on internally. Why is this like this? Why is this happening this way? How is this even happening at all? What brings it all together? It is not an occasional curiosity. For a lot of my clients, it runs almost constantly, this conversation internally, whether it even comes out of their mouth. Most of the time, luckily, it does not. Let me tell you what that engine is. That relentless drive to understand is a huge part of what makes different thinkers so effective in business and in life. I ask the question nobody even thought about quite often. This is one of your strongest skills. So when you finally get a name for something, a diagnosis, a label, a framework that finally explains why you're doing something the way you do it, or why you've always done it that way, it answers that why that's been running in the background for years, sometimes decades. Your brain is so excited to find the name. It can finally, it just loves all that dopamine hit, all those connectors. It's like solving the best puzzle. Naming genuinely matters. It gives you language. It gives you a place to stand. I still remember my own version of this, not getting the name exactly when I went through the diagnosis process for ADHD. I was left with no clear answer and no exact wordings, and actually more vagueness, which comes up every time I work on my medical chart. Which is interesting. And it leaves me a little annoyed. I know the difference. Here's where it gets tricky. Answering a why question that's been running for years produces that dopamine hit. We talked about it, big one. When the brain gets that hit that strong, it doesn't always want to ask the next question. Sometimes it stops. It sits in the answer and it kind of basks in it a little bit. I've probably seen this in myself. I know I've seen it in other clients. They get the label through therapy, through coaching, through a video they saw on social, and they go, oh my gosh, this is me. That becomes the whole story for a while. They tell everybody that they can or feel comfortable with. They reread the same article 6 times. They feel, understandably, like they have found a missing piece, and they have. But the missing piece was never supposed to be just that wording and the finish line. It's the beginning of the process. And when the dopamine hits from naming it is so strong, a lot of people, they try and camp in that. Not effective. I've got a whole video and a blog about that. Feel free to check it out. It'll be linked below. What happens though when your brain doesn't just name something but locks onto the name itself and won't let go? That's the right word vice effect. Like I said, whole other video. What we're talking about here is once something has been named, it starts to feel handled. You can explain it at dinner. You can post about it. You can bring it up in conversation maybe next week, relevant or not. All of that explaining can feel like progress because it takes energy and it's kind of vulnerable when we speak it out loud. But talking about a thing and doing something different because of it are not the same actions. That's such a good point. I'm going to say it again. Talking about a thing and doing something different because of it is not the same action. They only feel identical from the inside. You're like, ooh, dopamine hit, yay! Not an action. I want to be really clear about something here. I don't diagnose. I am never searching for what's wrong with someone. It is about finding what is going on in someone's life that is not moving them forward. What is holding them back from being the most successful person they can be with all of their strengths in full use. I'm always wanting everybody to use all of those strengths. What naming actually does when you let go all the way is hands you new options, new choices you didn't know you had access to before because you didn't have the language. The work is in noticing those options and choices. Naming is a verb. It's a fixed point. Have it done. Doing. Naming is actually the noun. Doing is the verb. I love being dyslexic at times. Doing means tolerating that first attempt, trying things, and often it failing. That's what doing means in this context. Let me give an example. I had a client who would I knew almost immediately they were a verbal processor. And well above average verbal processor. And so I was finally able to tell them. They were so amazed. Once we had named that, they took off. Books, studies, conversations with AI, deep dives into actual science. Like they told everybody they talked to. Because remember, they were verbal processing. Did you know I'm a verbal processor? I'm a verbal thinker. It was great research. They understood themselves better. That was awesome. But nothing was shifting. And so after about 5 weeks of that pure research, zero shift in behavior, I get to say something. That's the fun of being a coach. And I ask them, now that you know this, how can we shift that into actually doing that becomes more of a strength instead of something that runs the show? How does this change in your relationships? That question is where the work started. We spent a couple of sessions building it out. Voice to text tools so their verbal processing had somewhere useful to go. Noticing the moments in their relationships that called for a quiet listening rather than more talking. Not listening while composing the next sentence, actually listening, nothing running through their head. They're still working on that. The art of listening without needing to know what comes next. And it is reshaping their relationships. I promise you they are reshaping their neurology. Not the month of some research. That part was great. It was the actual doing part that is changing their lives. So here's how you move from naming to acting, doing something. And it is not SMART goals. You do not need a plan with lots of, you need 4 honest answers. Number 1, now that you know this, do you want to shift anything about it? Number 2, what could be different that would support your goals? Number 3, are there micro actions you could take to move closer to your goal related to this? And number 4, what action do you want to take first? Once you have an answer to at least one small step you can take, tie it to that smallest possible next action, not the biggest one. You can imagine, I know you can imagine big, small. Set a timer, write it down, take 5 minutes and just research on taking that. And then next time you're in the circumstance, take the action. It's not going to be pretty. I promise you your first actions are going to be kind of ugly and clunky and they're not going to be amazing. Don't name that. Just recognize that you've taken a step forward. Acknowledge that. That's the whole goal here. Naming something is real and it matters. And I will never tell a client to skip that step or rush through it. But naming was always meant to be the doorway to the answers and options, not the room. If you've been standing in this doorway for a while, it's time to step forward. It's time to stop researching. It's time to stop looking at all the hinges in the framing. It's okay. That was not wasted time. It is just time to walk through the doorway into the room and really take some actions. Earlier, I mentioned a few different words that I've found over the years that have gotten me excited, kicked off my dopamine. I've done lots of research. One of those in particular was time blindness. I wrote blogs about it. I made infographics and diagrams. I did all the things. I still look up some stuff about it. But after I got done with that, I had to take some ownership. Being 5 or 10 minutes late for things was not moving me closer to all of my goals. So I asked myself what I could actually do about that. And the answer had two parts that I felt were really effective. First, I looked at what was actually happening in the moments before I walked out the door. I now know exactly what happens. I notice all sorts of things in the last 5 minutes. Oh, I could just do this. It's not quite time to be there yet. I don't have to be there till 7. So I've still got 5-10 minutes. Not accounting for the drive time. Not accounting for there might be traffic. There might be, who knows, detour, something like that. So now I know, particularly if this is an event that my husband, it's his event, I ask him what time I need to be ready to leave, because he does very well with the departure time and all of that. So my job is to be sitting in the living room, ready to go, ready to go. The time he said we need to depart, doesn't matter when we need to be there. That works really well. The second is I asked people close to me for grace. I asked if they could let me be 5 or 10 minutes late sometimes so I could stop fighting so hard against time blindness every single meeting. And most of them were incredibly gracious once we talked about it. And they were like, yeah, we get it. You deserve to just be you from time to time. And they let me know if there's a meeting that's really important and I need to be on time. They're like, hey, you kind of got to be here right at this time or we won't be able to hang out. So I'll ask the same thing I ask my clients. Now that you know this about yourself, what is the one thing you're going to do differently by Friday? Drop it in the comments. I love and read everything. I'm Joy Gina, International Neurodiversity Coach and Unconventional Leadership Coach, championing for you different thinkers. Remember, when you get the name, that's awesome. Enjoy that, but then plan for the next action step for yourself. That growth is incredible. That's the power of knowledge. Bye now.